Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Setu. I'm part of this ZEVI program, which stands for the Zero Emission Vehicle Awareness Initiative. As part of the ZEVI initiative, we are conducting a lot of talk sessions and other programs for children. The main aim is to promote zero emission vehicles um, uh, in Canada, so we can help Canada achieve the net zero by 2035, net zero emissions by 2035. So as part of this program, we have Balaram Basmall, who is going to talk about his own journey into achieving net zero. Balram is an IT system specialist and a data architect who works in the public sector. He's just not all business, though. His true passion lies in researching electric vehicle battery technology and other eco friendly initiatives aimed at achieving zero emissions. So come along and join him informally as he combines his technical expertise with his dedication to making the world a greener place, drawing from his own experience in owning electric vehicles and implementing green technology at home. I met Balram in 2011, and since then, I know he has been very passionate about electric vehicles, especially. And so now he has taken it up taken it up a notch and electrified his home as well. Balram, I invite you to conduct this talk session. Over to you, Balram.
Thank you, Sedu, and thank you, everyone. Good evening, everyone, and happy Friday. Um, and thank you for the STEM Labs and GRMA for giving me this opportunity to talk to you. And I'm here as a layman. I'm not an expert. I'm not a technical person. And let's have like a informal session, a chat session, while I take you through my journey over the years as to, my transition from a layman to almost like a passionate EV enthusiast and a net zero. Someone who can actually specialize and talk about a little bit about being net zero and then prevent or reducing our carbon footprint so that we can save something for the future generations to come. So with that, please sit back, enjoy the journey. I'm going to actually talk to you a little bit as a story. Dating back to 2008 when I started my journey with the EV. So I'm going to talk to you as if I'm going to narrate a story, right? It was actually a crisp winter morning in December 2008. We were shopping for a brand new car. Not that our old car was broken, but I have a habit of changing my cars every 5 years, much to the displeasure of my wife, but that's me. So we were at a dealership in Vaughan, which was about to close down. And I looked around, and obviously they had many cars there, and it's a Ford dealership. Uh, and I wanted an SUV at that time. So essentially, the sales manager said, "Unfortunately, we don't have anything within your budget, but I do have a car that nobody wants. It's sitting on the side of the lot, and we are closing down. It's in December before Christmas. So if we can make a deal, I will sell this car for you." And the good thing with that car is, the government actually gives $5,000 free because EVs were just coming into the market at that time. So he asked me to take it for a test drive. I was skeptical. Two things, because being a South Asian and Indian, we're always passionate with Hondas and Toyotas. Nobody has heard about Ford, and the only thing I've heard about Ford was, fix or repair daily, right? So, okay, let's take a look. So then me and my wife got into the car. The sales manager sat next to us and gave me the key. And then, so okay, start the car. And then obviously we had the push button start. I started, nothing happened. I said, what the heck? Oh, this is a hybrid. Okay, what is a hybrid? I have no idea because I'm always used to uh, gasoline engines. So he said, okay, put it on the drive, ease up on the gas pedal, coast slightly down the road. And then I did. And what happened was, there was no noise. The car was moving, but still I couldn't hear an engine. Uh, just a smooth hum, and the car was moving. And that was my smooth transition to the EV world. I was sold on that car because it was actually moving with its own battery power up to a speed of 60 kilometers per hour. And obviously in the car dealership next to the street, the speed limits are about 20 to 30 or 60 kilometers, and the car was moving on its own with zero gasoline. And that was how I started my journey. So I I purchased the car. Obviously, I got a good deal, and few of the incentives that I had in buying the car at that time was, of course, it's an all-wheel drive and then plenty of space, good for a family. And since this was a dealer demo, it had all the bells and whistles. It had a navigation system in the middle, a sunroof, a leather seat, you name it, it had everything. Plus, it was a hybrid, which was nobody has seen that Ford Escape hybrids at that time because they were such short supply. I purchased the car, and then a month later, I was starting to drive it. I got a letter from the government. The ministry said you're eligible for a $5,000 rebate. That's a rebate, and that was like a lottery for me. A car at a good cost, and another $5,000 from the government, which made my day because I started saving on the money. And then I asked the dealership, what's the oil change interval? Oh, it's about 25,000 kilometers. I was used to changing oil for my Toyota Camry every 5,000 kilometers. And at that time, it was $35 to $40. And this thing was like 25,000 kilometers. You change the oil once. There in itself lies the savings. And then I was cruising down the city streets in Toronto when I go downtown at 60 kilometers per hour, not using a drop of gas. And then we took it for long distance drives. And this car gave me close to 750 to 800 kilometers on a full tank of gas. It's an all-wheel drive SUV. It's a Ford. Usually a six-cylinder car will probably give you like 450, 500 kilometers. And this thing was giving me 750 to 800. And then it was almost like an adrenaline rush to see the you had the gauge in the speedometer. You have a green energy gauge which will actually give you feedback how well you're driving. And then the regenerative braking, because when you brake, the electricity goes back into the battery of the car. So this actually started journey, and I was hooked on to, hey, this is definitely previously, I've seen electric cars and golf courses. They're called buggies, or and airports where they take the passengers. But this is an actual electric car. Obviously, it had a gasoline engine, but it was still had its own power, an electric battery, and it was an amazing experience for me. So I had this car about 7 years, and I started reading much about what hybrids are and how do they work, what's the regenerative capacity, what's called regenerative braking, um, what type of battery does it use, what type of engine does a hybrid use, and this is the first time I'm listening to reading about an Atkinson cycle instead of an Otto cycle. So these are all the things that I started learning. Hey, this is amazing. There is a world out there where there's alternatives. And of course, gas at that time was about 80 cents. And it was increasing. But in 2008, even 80 cents, I think was a higher amount of money. Because when I first came to Canada as a student, way back in 1999, I used to see gas prices at 54 to 60 cents a liter. Not anymore, it's a distant dream. So I had this car for about 7 years. And then GM, then the financial crisis started. And then most of the car companies went down under. And one of the conditions for the US government for the bailout was to build efficient cars. And then this GM's answer to this particular financial bailout was the first EV that they produced. Of course, they had the EV that they produced way back in 90s, which it's a disaster. It was a nice car, but I think only few of them was made. They took it back and then they crushed the whole EV. So if you watch the documentary Who Killed the Electric Car, you'll actually understand the story. GM had electric cars before, but then they succumbed to the oil industry or oil lobby, and they killed all those electric cars. But this was their answer. And saw this car at a dealership in, I live in Bradford, next to Newmarket. So I went to Aurora, saw this car. The dealership had no incentives of selling me this car. They were directing me to their gas guzzlers and other nice cars and say, nobody buys this car. So we have this good deal on this cars and let's go and take a look. But somehow this car garnered my attention and I started asking questions. And lo and behold, the dealership had no clue to tell me anything about this car because they didn't want to sell this car. Then I started researching about this car, and this car is a plug-in hybrid. And then I said, what is a plug-in hybrid, a PHEV? Oh, the good thing with this car is, it can actually run on battery power up to 85 kilometer. It has an 85 kilometer range battery, and it can go on a highway at 100 or 120 kilometers per hour and still run on battery. There's no limitation. And then once the battery dies down or gets depleted, there's a small electric engine. It's a 3-cylinder engine that acts as a generator, which powers the battery again. So it's called an extended range plug-in hybrid. So the actual electric motor is the one that drives the car. The gasoline engine is just a backup. And the gas tank was tiny. It's just 25 liters of gas. And then I said, let's see, how does this car behave? And I took it on a trip, I think up to Quebec City and back. And I was amazed because with the knowledge that I had from my hybrid, I know about, driving the car efficiently, not being a lead foot, and using the gas pedal diligently. And this car amazed me. It gave me 1,500 kilometers on a full tank of gas. And that was very, wow. And then the cool thing about this, the government gave me $14,000 back just because I bought an electric car. And then I got another $800 as a rebate check to put an electric charger at home. So that is a good proposition. So after, the car cost about $35,000 or $40,000, but after all those reductions, I ended up paying 23. And the cool thing with this car, it had all the bells and whistles, and it could park itself, it could parallel park itself, you can park anywhere in downtown, it will automatically park, all this cool stuff. But it's still a car. It's a sedan, and it's a hatchback, and it helped me to understand a few things. How to maximize my range. So I actually got into a Volt forum, which is like a group of people who owns the Chevy Volt, and they talk about squeezing the maximum out from this car, something called a technique called hypermiling, cruising, using the regenerative braking, so you can actually extend the range of the battery. So even though the projected range of the car was about 80 to 85 kilometers, there were people who actually achieved about 100 kilometers range using techniques of hypermiling and using the terrain to their advantage. And this actually challenged me so that I took it upon a challenge that I would only fill up this tank only once every month. And I was able to achieve that by using the techniques of good driving habits. Of course, I'm not a lead foot, but I still like to enjoy my drives. But this car will actually give back a lot if you treat it well in terms of driving. So finally, we had an electric car that was a practical car, which took me further on a full charge with little gas. So again, as I said, which car will give you 1,500 kilometers on 25 liters of gas? This is what I had. So I had this car for about 3-4 years. I always wanted a Tesla, but never could afford it because Teslas was above my price range. They had the Model S and the Model X. And then they introduced the Model 3, which is again a car. So I didn't want to go for another car. But then they came out with the Model Y, which is an SUV and a four-wheel drive. And they were willing to take my Volt back, gave me a good trade-in. Um, so what actually drove me to Tesla was they have been the pioneers of EV, transitioning to a greener world, about 530 kilometers projected range on a full charge, and their amazing charging network. So literally you can go anywhere in North America with a Tesla. Again, things are changing. So when I'm talking with my experience driving a Tesla. But most of other car companies are coming up with their own charging infrastructure. And recently, Tesla has opened up their charging infrastructure to other car manufacturers too. So range anxiety is a thing of the past. You have good networks. Of course, you have more charging locations in the US compared to Canada, but it's changing. I think every month, Tesla is introducing 5 to 6 charging stations in each location. The other thing that actually drew me to this particular car was its safety record. And my insurance dropped like a stone because two things, there was not much data about the car, and the safety rating was 5-star with all the bells and whistles, the self-driving, everything. So that was another incentive. Then the other thing that I really love with this car is the instant torque of the acceleration, because there's no gears to engage, there's no engine. So as soon as you touch the gas pedal, this car flies. It's heavy, it's safe. And then the other thing, you pretty much have a brand new car because of the over-the-air updates, because each and every time Tesla has an update, it adds new features. So your car is never old. You don't have to worry about, oh, geez, I don't have this, I don't have that. It just comes automatically into the car, and the car is built. And I wish all the other companies would actually follow that principles, and I believe they are changing. So this was a game changer for me, and I've had this car back all from 2021. I bought this in March, and my wife says it's my birthday present because I'm born in March. And I've loved this car ever since. I've put in about 40,000 kilometers, since. I would have done more had not we had the COVID. We were stuck at home, but still I've managed 40,000 kilometers on this car. And I've done many road trips. I've used every feature of the car, and also enjoyed the zero benefit, like the benefit of zero maintenance. I haven't changed anything on this car yet. There's no oil change. There's no tire rotation, nothing. So the only thing I've changed could be like an air filter, the cabin air filter, because there's nothing to go with this car, and it's an amazing machine. Uh, so I would like to actually, this could be something that many people may have in mind. Oh, I like to have a Tesla, but what about if I get stranded? What about, the charging network? What happens when it's really cold? Because we all live in a cold climate. How does the battery stand up? What is the benefit? Oh, upfront, it's so expensive. I can probably buy 2 cars for the price of a Tesla, and I can run it to the ground. Yes, they're all true, but understand the benefits. The charging network, obviously, you have a great charging network. Uh, and there are certain tips that you probably have to follow with a Tesla. So, as with any battery, the life of a battery depends on your charging habits. So, the first thing I learned was never let the car charge above 80%, except for long distance drives, and never let the car sit with less than 10% charge. So your optimum range always is between 10% and 80%. And the car gives you feedback, plenty of feedback. Uh, and there is no harm in keeping the car plugged in your garage, because it has its own battery management system. So you plug in the car, it keeps the car warm, it keeps the car cold. The battery has its own air conditioner. You have a cabin air conditioner as well as another air conditioner that actually maintains the battery. So that's another thing. So for the longevity of the battery, that is key, how you manage the battery. Cost benefits, as I said, the only thing I have changed is the cabin air filter, which is $26. And the guy actually came in and did that for free. So there was a Tesla guy who came in with his own car, the service, and everything is done through the app. They changed the cabin air filter because it started stinking after a while, and then we change it. And that's the only expense that I had for the past 2.5 years. Managing range and overcoming range anxiety. So when you go on a road trip, when you actually drive, you are always at the back of the mind, you will always think, what if I run out of charge? With careful planning, with a little bit of uh, like with good planning or careful planning, I'd say, you don't have to worry about this, because the car actually knows the optimum route it will take, and it will give you the best charging network. It will take into account the terrain. And I also read somewhere that it's actually getting feedback from the weather network with the headwinds and the wind resistance, the weight, everything, and it optimizes the range, and it will tell you how long do you need to charge, where do you need to stop, and where do you need to how much battery charge would you need to continue your journey. And I wanted to actually try it with my first trip to New Jersey. Yes, of course, you add a little bit more time of charging in your long distance trip. So if your trip to New Jersey, usually in a gasoline car, takes about 8 to 9 hours, Tesla may take 10.5 hours. But the way I see it is, while I take a washroom break, while I take a lunch break, the car is charging for me. So I don't have to worry about that. And every 2 hours, it's good to take a break, stretch your legs, change the drivers, and continue your journey. And in order to plan your trip, there are a couple of applications that you can use. One, of course, is the trip planner that Tesla has on board, using the onboard computer and online, which is a little bit, I would say, challenged, for a company like that. I don't know why, but I would probably use another app called ABRP, and I've shared that with a few of my friends here. It's an app that you can actually download, and you can put your parameters in there, like what's the make of your car, what is the charging, what is the start charging range percentage, and the weight of the car. It will automatically calculate and say, okay, you need to stop at this particular charging station after 2 hours, and then you will have this much range. So it calculates all that and gives you um, an almost an accurate prediction of how much stops would you need in order for you to go from point A to point B. Of course, for a long distance, if it's less than 500 kilometers, you don't have to worry. The car is perfectly okay. It will go, take you there, and bring you back. So, say for example, from my place to Niagara Falls, I don't have to stop anywhere to charge. It just goes, you come back. Uh, the other thing about this car, it doesn't have an air conditioner. It uses a heat pump, which is another efficient technology. And Tesla was the pioneer in using heat pump technology. So heat pump almost is like a air conditioner in reverse. So it takes the ambient outside air, compresses it, and then passes on back into the cabin, whether you need it cooled or whether you need the heat. So you're not using the battery as much as resistive heating would do. And the other technique that I've also used in winter is, I actually put the climate to say about 19 degrees so that the heat pump is not working, but I use the seat heater and the steering heater using the resistive heat, which actually warms up the car pretty good and increases your range. But and most of the people will say, oh, battery cars are bad in winter. Yes, of course, the battery charges, the battery performance goes down. But if you notice, your gasoline car also does the same. The the problem is, we are so used to gasoline and we know we can fill up. It loses almost 30% of its efficiency in winter. And in the thick of winter, the engine has to work hard in order to bring up the car to the optimum temperature. It's the same with uh, a battery car too. So we always say we don't compare it with an ICE engine to a battery engine. So there's obviously pros and cons, but if you are willing to compromise a little bit on the comfort, like just use the seat heater and the steering heaters, the car will have a good range. Uh, some of the drawbacks that I've seen, obviously, I didn't like the suspension. It's such a heavy car. It's almost 2 tons or 2,000 kilos. Just the battery pack alone is heavy because there's a lot of battery underneath the platform. So that in order to support the car, the suspension is hard. So you will actually feel if you are going through steels or if you go down through the streetcar lines in Toronto, you will feel every jolt and it's a bone jarring experience sometimes. But on a highway, they call it a sport tuned suspension. So it's a little bit rough. The other thing that I would like them to improve, and I would say, the tire wear. It's such a heavy car, the wear on the tires is a little bit heavy. So that is another thing that you probably may have to factor. But again, when you look at the overall cost of ownership, your upfront cost, if you pay, say, monthly $700, $800, I don't know, I'm not sure. Because when I purchased it, the car price was around 85, which then they increased, and then now they've reduced a little bit. So I'm not sure exactly how much people are paying now, but if that's the only expense that you have, nothing else. And if you charge at home, and I'll come to that point, um, it's still it's just peanuts essentially. And I do have a solar panel at home, so I literally charge the car for free. And now I think Toronto Hydro and many other hydro companies have a time of use rate starting at 11 o'clock. Between 11 and 4 a.m., it's 2 cents per kilowatt hour. So most of the hydro companies are actually offering that. So if you have a Tesla or if you have another electric car, set it up to charge after 11 o'clock and you won't be paying that much if you're charging at home. So with this, I just wanted to get to my the journey towards being net zero. So last year, Government of Canada announced the HER program, which is called the Energy Rebate Program. They partnered with Enbridge. So they're actually giving out close to $10,000 in rebates for uh, making sustainable moves and in your journey towards green initiatives. So that includes solar panels, that includes heat pumps, that includes air sealing your home, changing your windows and doors. And if you own your home and it's your primary residence, most of the Ontarians are eligible for a $10,000 rebate from the government. I don't know how long that program will be, but as long as the Trudeau government is there, rest assured the incentives will be there. And plus that, if you're struggling to say, hey, how do I come up with all this money to do the upgrades? The government of Canada also gives you up to $40,000 interest-free loan for 10 years. The only two things that you have to do think about is you have to have good credit rating, and you need to own your home. That's it. And you have a 10-year payback period to get everything done. So the first thing that I did, and since I have an electric car, I wanted to charge it for free. I went solar. I have solar panels on my roof. I have 14 panels, and luckily my house faces southwest, which gets most of the sun. It's a 6.5 kilowatt system, and it's net metered. That means I don't have a battery to store the electricity that I produce, but I send it back to the grid. And my production versus consumption is basically 110%. So I actually produce 10% more than I consume, and I send it back to the grid. Uh, I have a 10 kilowatt inverter. So from a 6.5 kilowatt system, I can increase it to 10 at a later stage. Um, and the good thing with Tesla now, it knows I have a solar panel on the roof. So it will start charging in the morning when I'm plugged in, because it actually looks at the sine wave of the electricity curve, and it knows the car. I'm actually on an inverter, which is powering my home. So it will charge when the sun shines. I can actually charge the car for free. So I haven't literally used any of my nighttime hydro to charge the car. That is another benefit. Cost benefit, I've had this for about 6 months. I haven't paid a single penny in electricity cost. Uh, my bills are always zero because I always get a credit. And then the good thing with this, I have almost like an energy bank. So whatever excess energy I send back to the grid, I get a credit. So in winter, when obviously in Canada, we have really dark days in winter and shorter days, I get the credit back. So it's a win-win situation. So I'm producing more during summer and I'm drawing more during winter, and still I'm paying a lot less, or maybe again zero. I don't know because I only had it for about 6 months. I don't know much about winter, but this is what I've heard. This is what I've seen with a couple of my friends. The other thing I also did was I have a 25-year-old home. So obviously the standards were less at that time. So I did air sealing, which means I changed all the windows to triple pane e-argon. And I also did attic insulation, which increased my energy efficiency levels from 91 to almost 76 kilojoules. So you can actually see this is an actual energy evaluation that I did at my home. So an average Canadian home is 91 gigajoules, and I'm here at 76. So on my journey towards a net zero emitter. Uh, Recently, I also installed an air source heat pump. An air source heat pump is nothing but an air conditioner that runs in reverse. So in winter, you have a heater, and in summer, you have an air conditioner. And the total efficiency is for every unit of hydro uses, it produces 3 units of energy. So the efficiency is 300%. So when you look at a regular furnace, at the most you get like 92%, but this one actually gives you 300%. So it's essentially, you just basically change it. If your air conditioner is almost at the end of its life, or you just change it, and the government gives you about $7,500 back. So it's definitely a win-win. And I'm using it as a hybrid system. So air source heat pumps are only efficient up to minus 20 or minus 25. So obviously in Canada, in Southern Ontario, we can go up to minus 35, minus 40. So this is a hybrid system. So essentially, after we pass the threshold of minus 15, when air source heat pumps become inefficient, we do have the comfort of the furnace kicking in and then powering up the heating of the home. So essentially, it's two systems working in tandem to make sure that I use gas efficiently. So it will turn on and the heat pump will turn on and it will keep on heating and then it will shut down. But the heat pump will keep on running just to keep the house warm. So again, my net efficiency gain, I did another evaluation, but I don't have the printout yet. I was at 50 gigajoules. So I'm pretty much here now. So the only two more things that I probably may end up doing is to get a heat pump water heater, which runs on the same principle. So, and get rid of my gas stove. So that will definitely make me literally a zero emission house. That is my next project for next year because I pretty much exhausted the last couple of years of my resources of, obviously this costs money, but I did get the $10,600 back. So there's a $600 audit fee that you have to pay an auditor to qualify for the rebates. So the government pays you $10,000 plus the $600 back that you pay for the auditor. So it's definitely a win-win, and I encourage everybody to start looking at those options. Not everything, maybe this is where you can offset your carbon footprint. You don't have to go with an electric car. So, you actually gain something. You can still drive a fuel efficient car if you don't like to drive an electric car, but you can still offset a lot of carbon footprint using these small techniques. It's all the small changes will add up. If today, I have like I know 10 people doing the same. Tomorrow it will be 100. So as the word spreads, if we all do our small part, I think we can really achieve a perfect world uh, for our next generations to come. So with that, that concludes my journey and my story. I am definitely thankful for the Zevi team and GRMA for giving me this opportunity. And of course, Dilip and Setu for making me part of this journey. And it's an exciting journey for me. And I'm still continuing that journey. If you need some advice or help in terms of how to get the funding or how to get an energy auditor, I can talk about my experiences. Definitely, I'm open to, and if there are questions, I'm happy to take it as well. Thank you, Sedu. Thank you, Dilip.
Thank you, Balram. Really encouraging and really motivating because more than the journey itself, it's getting to know these options, that there are options that we have in our hands that we can do something about. That is really encouraging for all of us. So thank you so much for taking us along with you on your journey to net zero emissions. Um, the floor is open for questions. If anybody has any questions specific to either the electric vehicles or the government rebates for the net zero.
Hi, Balaram.
Hi, Sujit.
Hi. Thanks. It was an interesting journey. Couple of questions. One was you mentioned about your Tesla, about tire rotation. Is that just the timing that it hasn't come up for rotation, or has it got something else? Because on the other hand, you were saying that the tire wear was generally higher. What was that?
So essentially, you need to do a tire rotation every 20,000 kilometers.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't changed my tires yet. I'm talking from the experience of others and what I've read. The tire wear compared to other cars on a Tesla is more. Two things: because of the instantaneous acceleration, you spin the wheels a little bit, and because of the weight. And then, of course, they use a softer rubber to reduce the rolling resistance. So it's a special tire, and it's foam filled. So that's the reason why the tires of a Tesla wear out faster.
No, but about the rotation, the rotation is required, or is there anything else?
They recommend. They recommend a rotation every 20,000
Oh,
kilometers.
okay.
They don't have it in their manual, but there
Yeah.
is in the Tesla there is a option where it actually, I think it was part of one of the software updates where it will actually tell you the tire service intervals. You can reset it and then it will remind you. It's just almost like changing your fridge filter or something like that, right?
Yeah.
It just gives you
Yeah.
a reminder. That's all.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The other thing is about your about having gone net zero on your home. That I'd come back to you. I definitely I'm also interested in doing that. So I'll get back in touch with you on that. Thank you.
No
Thanks.
worries.
Yeah, I have a one question. First of all, thank you for all the information. Um, now, I mean, I understand that when you are on the highways, there are enough charging stations, but off the highway, suppose you are in inland areas, how is the coverage now? Um, I mean, do you really get stuck somewhere, or you really have to plan well beforehand for that kind of thing?
Um, it's still a fact that certain parts of northern Ontario and certain parts of rural Canada are not covered. But Tesla also gives you the option, and other the charging apps that I mentioned, ABRP or Plan My Trip Tesla, it will actually give you the option of non-Tesla charges. And then there is Petro-Canada has a charging network. They have started that. There's another company called Flow, and then another company called Evo. So yes, of course, most of them are around the highways, but I've seen a lot of charging stations outside of the highways. So obviously, sometimes you may have to take a detour from the highway to go and charge and come back in a Tesla. But I've also seen smaller gas stations with electric charging stations now. But again, uh, reliability is an issue because you think that you're nearing a charging station, and when you go, the charging station probably is broken or it's not working. Some of the hotels, they have actually started offering that charging network as well. But I would say if you plan your trip carefully and don't let the car go below, say, 20%, you're still okay. Because the car knows that, if the next charging station is, say, X number of kilometers away, it will actually reduce the function, it will reduce
Right,
the
right.
performance, and then it will try to maximize the range. And again, planning the trip is really important. But once you start doing that, you'll get used to it. So obviously, it's all like learning a bicycle. First time,
Yeah.
it's tough. You fall down, you take some bruises, then it becomes second nature. Then you start becoming an expert. So it's the same thing. So it's a journey over the years, and I think the charging network has improved, and it's improving every day. Even I've seen, and I keep ahead of, like, where the new charging stations are coming, and I see them coming up everywhere, almost everywhere. And I also heard that most of the hydro companies, they're actually planning to implement their own charging network. So it's just a matter of 5 to 6 years before the charging network. And again, let's say these people are there to make money. So they need consumers in order to produce an output or a commodity. So we being the consumers, we start building the network. Obviously, when there are people to buy things, they will produce more, they will sell more things. So more electric cars on the road, more charging stations.
So the big three, you mentioned the GM and Ford. Are they now really uh, a lot more into electric vehicles than before? Like Tesla, exclusively is EVs, but the General Motors and the big three, they still, have mostly gas vehicles. I guess some are hybrid, but so do you see them changing heavily into the EV area? Or
As a company, I don't trust GM because they keep changing their focus. But the last thing I heard was they have almost 30 models in the lineup with a new platform called Ulterium. And I think they stopped producing the Bolt, which is one of the most affordable EVs and was one of the best-selling EVs. And I even drove that car. It's a nice car. They stopped it, but then they brought it back to the market just because of the demand. So, and Ford is a different story. I have few friends who actually work at the Oakville assembly plant. The whole plant is being retooled in another 3 to 4 years. It's just going to be producing electric vehicles. They had some issues with lithium availability for the battery technology, but now they are partnering with LG Chem and Panasonic and with Tesla and the Chinese battery makers BYD, the BYD company, the car company, with solid state batteries. So I would say the outlook is pretty rosy for electric cars. And Nissan is bringing electric cars. Audi is bringing electric cars. Volkswagen ID4. Many companies. They're just exclusively focusing and concentrating on EVs. And the other thing I also heard that the government may allow the Chinese companies to start selling their cars, which will be a game changer because China has become a world leader in electric car production. And just wait for 2 more years. Once Toyota gets into the fray, the whole landscape is going to change because with their lithium phosphate battery, which they just showcased at the Tokyo Motor Show, which will actually give you 930 kilometers of range on a single charge. That's a game changer. Yes, other cars can actually do that right now with lithium ion, but it increases cost, it increases weight of the. So that's why they have that sweet spot to say, okay, you know what? Most of the times it's just 500 kilometers, and you can reach from point A to point B. And even if you look at the gasoline cars, their range is around 560 kilometers, except for a couple of hybrids. Most of the pure gasoline cars, SUVs, their range is around 560. So that's the sweet spot that the car companies think that they will get people to start buying these cars by reducing the cost and keeping the cost in check.
Sorry, on the charging infrastructure in Toronto, there was somebody telling me that there's free charging stations there. And I was just wondering if there are free charging stations, how do those business models work? Which hydro is providing those free charging stations? Do you know that?
Actually, thanks for asking that question. Nothing is free in this world, especially in Canada, because it's actually funded by the federal government from our carbon taxes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so there are stations, yeah?
There are few free charging stations.
Okay.
The drawback there is, I've heard and I've seen that sometimes when you go there, they don't work.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. So you get what you pay for, right?
Mm-hmm.
But at least with the regular infrastructure, the charging infrastructure like Tesla supercharging network, Flow, and Evo, and I think there is another company called Wingo. So it's a paid model, and they have an incentive to keep the charging stations running just because they can make money out of it. And as I said, when the demand goes up, there will be more supply, and we will definitely be seeing. And then I was actually at the outlet mall in Cookstown, right, near Barrie. They had one charging station. Now I actually see 16 charging stalls back to back. It's not a Tesla. It's actually a company called EVO, EVO.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So that is funded by the government. So that's why it's probably a promotional thing that they have.
Yeah, yeah. So the free ones are funded by the government, and most of the other charging network is subsidized by the government. So I would say this is where our carbon taxes go.
Okay. Thanks.
So, do you know if there are other opportunities for retail stores, such as like a Walmart or a Costco, to introduce charging stations? And I know at the moment we don't have any in any of the retail stores, except probably for IKEA. I don't think any of the retail stores carry any charging stations. So, would there be any drive on their side to introduce charging stations at their ends as well?
Why not? If there is enough demand, I think it will definitely be an incentive for them to increase the foot traffic into the store, because most people can,
Yeah.
maybe they can start for free. And I can tell you from example, in Bradford, which is such a small town, there's a Food Basics. They have 3 charging stalls only for electric cars, and it's free. So you shop, you plug in your car, and by the time you come back, of course, it's a level 2 charger. It's not like a high-speed charger, but you'll still get about 20 to 25 kilometers in an hour, right? So it's not too bad. So it's like an incentive. Why not? So I say there should be more incentives from the government, which the government is trying to. But then, of course, there are less takers for this technology yet, because most people are skeptical about electric cars, and they still consider them as golf carts. And we're so hooked on to the gasoline cars. And this was like exactly how it used to be in 1909 when Ford introduced Model T.
Mm.
People were skeptical because they thought that electric cars are like regular gasoline cars are people killers, and they still like their horse carts. So it's always that change.
Mm.
And we had about 100 years in between for the development of a ICE engine, and electric technology has only been around for about, at the most, 15 years. So I would say as we progress through the years, new technology will come up. And then they're also talking about capacitor-based batteries, which is like a sudden charge. You charge it for like five minutes, and it holds enough charge, and you can go just like a gasoline car. So you never know what scientific breakthroughs are in the making. Of course, battery technology will get cheaper, and it's getting cheaper with the lithium being phased out. Instead of that, they're coming up with the iron phosphate, lithium phosphate batteries and solid state batteries. One of the biggest thing with lithium ion batteries is the fire hazard, like because it uses a chemical electrolyte, which is highly inflammable. So that is still an issue. And Chevy Bolt had that issue. So they actually issued a warning to all the owners: never keep the car inside a garage, or never park it next to any other car. But then that was a battery manufacturing issue, which they sorted out. So there's still that danger. But I think electric cars, it's improving. The technology is improving. And as I said, once Toyota gets into the fray, the whole game will change. It's going to happen. And Toyota is a company which can actually make things work. They were so reluctant in moving to the electric car segment, and now they see the potential, the whole world changing to it, and they've changed their attitude completely. They come up with their new cars, they come up with their new technology, and few of the German companies, they've also changed that. And then again, we do underestimate the Chinese companies. They are huge. Like, China is a big uh, electric car market, and they have lots of incentives, and they're starting to learn a lot by doing R&D and by producing cars. Of course, they produce cheaper cars. And when China starts producing cheaper cars, there will be a price war. It'll be affordable for everyone. And I think the next 5-6 years definitely looks bright and rosy for the technology.
Yeah. Thank you, Balaram. So one question. So what is the future of hydrogen fuel cell technology? Toyota and some companies, they mainly focus on hydrogen fuel cells, right?
Yeah, it's still not a viable technology. Two things that I've learned about is the storage of hydrogen and the transportation of hydrogen, and the rare metals that you use to split the hydrogen atoms, right? So platinum and palladium, they're all expensive metals. So it's still a technology that's feasible, but it's still something that is expensive to produce in mass. So I think electric vehicles will be the transitionary phase, and then moving towards more, once we mature enough, they will start concentrating on hydrogen as fuel. But still, the negative point of hydrogen is, you produce a lot of greenhouse gases to produce hydrogen. So it's not actually a green technology. Yes, the byproduct of burning hydrogen is water, but in order to produce hydrogen, you either have to burn coal or you produce it using dirty electricity. It's definitely a transition phase.
Okay.
I think we are well on time here, 8 o'clock. Does it have any other questions for Balaram? I'll take that as a no. Thank you, everyone. Thank you especially for Balaram for conducting this session. This was really great. We will be sending this recording out so more people can listen to this and get motivated to start their own journeys towards net zero emissions. Thank you again, everyone. Thanks for joining. Thank you again, Balaram.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Everyone have a great weekend. Have a good night.